How you guys doing? Thank you for joining me on SB252. So, the coach of the Lions, Jim Caldwell, has just been fired by Detroit, and it was time for a change. Most definitely. I know a lot of people had speculations that he might be moving on from the Lions. Well, now it's official. He was the coach from 2014 to 2017, and really this season they had their worst season of all. I know they finished 9-7, but they obviously were disappointed, especially last week against the Cincinnati Bengals. They were not eliminated from playoff contention, although they needed some help. They came up short in Cincinnati. That was awful, a bad loss, and that's pretty much when we knew that Jim Caldwell would be done. But I thought he should be done before that. I remember he played the Baltimore Ravens this year. I know they had a lot of injuries. They had Haloti Ngata, who was injured, offensive line injuries. But at the same time, there's no more excuses. They've had time to get things together, and they haven't won a playoff game. Just like Matthew Stafford. Got the $135 million contract, but is 0-2 in the postseason. We think about during Jim Caldwell's first season with the Lions. They went 11-5. They had a good season. We thought they would win a playoff game. They lost in the first round to the Dallas Cowboys. Were unable to get it done. Then we think about a couple years later. Went to the playoffs, played the Seahawks. They had, I believe it was like a 9-2 record. They lost like 3 games in a row. Don't quote me on it, but at the same time, they went to Seattle, came up short, and Matthew Stafford, who a lot of people say he's a comeback guy and he makes a lot of great fourth quarter plays and wins games. You can't argue that. But in the regular season, when it comes down to January and December football, Matthew Stafford disappears, and quite frankly, he really did it again. Now, I know he was injured. I believe his hand was injured. He injured that against the Ravens, but at the same time, he didn't get it done this year, has had 9 chances to get a playoff win and hasn't gotten it yet. Now, give Jim Caldwell a lot of credit. We're talking about a team that has gone 0-16 before back in 2008. We just saw the Browns accomplish that, if you want to call it an accomplishment. But at the same time, remember they had Jim Schwartz at coach. The team was falling apart. They had a lot of problems inside the locker room. But slowly but surely, he was able to fix some of those problems. That started with getting rid of Sue. Now, the Donovan Sue is a good football player, and it really hurt the Lions' interior to get rid of him. Remember, back in 2014, Sue and Nick Fairley, who was also on that defensive line, they both left. But in 2014, they had stellar seasons. They were completely amazing during that year. But, again, that same year, lost in the playoffs. So, you think about this defense, you think about this team who also lost Levy to retirement, lost Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson was lighting up the stat book week in and week out. Now, I believe they've gotten over the loss of Calvin Johnson because they still got stud receivers like Marvin Jones and Golden Tate, so that shouldn't be the issue. Even though Eric Ebron never really turned out to what they wanted him to turn out into be, but at the same time, Matthew Stafford has plenty of weapons. It's just that this team doesn't have the ability on defense to finish. We think about losing Levy, like I said. Now their linebacking core has been very suspect this season. Teams have been throwing it to tight ends, down the middle, running the ball right on them. And speaking of the running game, the Lions have really had a poor running game. They haven't had a 100-yard rusher. I believe it's over 60 games now. And the last time they had a 1,000-yard rusher was Reggie Bush. I mean, it's been a long time, so hopefully the Lions can get this thing together. A historically bad franchise. It's so hard for them to get rid of a coach because Jim Caldwell is not a bad coach. He's 35-28 as the Lions head coach. 61-50 overall as the head man between the Lions and the Colts. So, like I said, not a bad head coach, but at the same time, the Lions want to do better than just mediocrity. But at the same time, if you get rid of Jim Caldwell, then you could go back to the days of 0-16 and the days of poor football, like Barry Sanders wanted to leave town because they were so bad. Anyway, thank you guys watching SB252. Talk to you guys later.